Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Optimizely's Vice President of Global Partnerships, Kim Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us at Opticon 18. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, Matty Wishnow. Matty has been in this business for a long time. He got his start when he founded the first internet vinyl record store called InSound, and InSound got purchased by the Warner Music Group in 2007. Matty then became their chief digital officer. Following that, he was the founder and CEO of Clearhead, which was one of Optimizely's top partners. And Matty and Clearhead were sponsors of Opticon last year. Around this time last year, you may remember that Accenture Interactive acquired Clearhead and brought them into the fold. And we're really excited about that acquisition because what it means is Matty and the Clearhead team, who have conducted tens of thousands of experiments for over 100 customers, can take that experience and go global with it. Matty was one of the top presenters last year at Opticon, and I fully expect that you will rate him one of the top presenters again this year. I'm delighted to introduce Matty Wishnow. Matty, welcome to the stage.
Wow, okay, this is pretty amazing. This is my fifth Opticon. As Kim said, my name is Matty Wishnow, and I run what's called the Experience Optimization Practice for Accenture Interactive. And before that, I did all those things that Kim said. But first and foremost, I'm a card-carrying Optonaut. I have not actually only been to 5 Opticons out here west. I've also been to 2 in London and 1 in New York. So technically it's been 8, but I feel a little bit like Ichiro Suzuki counting his Japanese baseball stats for the Major League Baseball record if I call it 8. So we're just going to call it 5. 5 Opticons, and every time I get up on this stage, I feel a little bit like a Saturday Night Live host. And I think many of you might know that on Saturday Night Live, when someone has hosted 5 times, they get to become part of the 5 Timers Club, right? You can probably picture Steve Martin or Martin Short wearing a jacket that says 5 on it. So I was thinking, who should I channel for my 5th Opticon? And I was talking to my wife about it, and I said, you know, I don't think I can touch Alec Baldwin, like the host emeritus of SNL. And I cannot bring more cowbell. Chris Walken, I can't do that. JT, multi-talented. I've got 1 or 2 talents. He probably has 10 or 20. Not going to try to dance. No singing today. And then I was like, okay, honey, I got it. I am going to channel Ben Affleck. And then she pulled up a photo on the internet of him getting drive-through at the Jack in the Box recently, and she was like, you probably don't want to talk about Ben Affleck right now. And I saw the photo, and I got kind of sad, so not Ben Affleck. And then I figured it out. Candice Bergen. We're going to Murphy Brown this Opticon. Hard-hitting investigative journalist, the person who asks the questions that others won't ask, the person who says the things that perhaps you all are thinking but not saying. That's what we're going to do today. And for this investigation, I want to do it different than in past years, because in past years, I've had the good fortune of talking about everything from multi-arm bandit algorithms to personalized segmentation, to cultures of experimentation, to advanced JavaScript, to how to test on single-page React apps, to how do you do a test plan, to how do you share results transparently and collaborate across a business. I've talked to so many teams. I've talked to product management teams. I've talked to engineering teams. I've talked to analytics teams. I've learned so much from you all, and it's been a pleasure to be part of those conversations. But the one voice, the one team that has been underrepresented, and not just at Opticon, in my opinion, but in so many conversations about experimentation, is the design team, the voice of design. Across those 5 Opticons, I can't think of a single session up here that was design-led. Actually, that's not true. I can think of one. My co-founder, Ryan Gardner, led one 2 or 3 years ago about data-driven redesigns. So that's a little bit weird, right? Design, why do we not talk about it enough? Just by show of hands, how many of you on your business card or your LinkedIn profile would self-identify as a designer? Super weird, folks. This is the investigation for today. Why, when we talk about experimentation, do we not talk about design enough? Is it that we haven't done a good job inviting designers to Opticon? Is it that design, big design, is like a third rail that experimentation can't get too close to without disrupting organizational orthodoxy? Why do we not talk about design enough? I would suggest design's pretty important. If each of you could think of the 10 or 100 best hypotheses you have that you want to test to solve an important problem, I bet that you would require some pretty rigorous, thoughtful, smart design. I'll also let you know that across those tens of thousands of experiments that I've had the good fortune of being witness to since we started Clearhead, about 25% of the hours put into that experimentation comes from designers, UX, UI designers, and UX and UI researchers. And most importantly, I would suggest that the value of all design, of all experiments, doesn't come from the software or the data or the analytics. The value that is created is through the expression of a solution hypothesis in design. So design and optimization. Organized on separate corners for most businesses, not all, but most businesses. Big design, exciting design, sexy design, aspirational design, innovative design sits in the realm of the CMO, maybe the creative director, and is associated with emotion and brand. And optimization sits on another part of the business with sober facts and statistics and a bias towards users. Well, let me tell you a story that reminds me about why this is a problem. We had a client early on for whom we were helping them launch an experience optimization program. About 6 or 9 months into it, we were having great success. The program was up and running. We were not just running a lot of experiments, we were making a real difference for their customers and their business. And I got a call one day from our stakeholder there who said, Matty, listen, we're going to have to put the experimentation program on hold for about a year. And I said, oh, that's terrible. Why? And she said, well, we're doing a big redesign. We're changing all of the design, and we have 12 months to do it. And this is really something that, it's not an optimization or experimentation thing. This is really a design thing. And I froze, and I panicked, and I said, wait, are you telling me that the single biggest experiment that you're going to invest in the next year, you're not going to test? You don't think of that as optimization? To which he said, well, I do, but I don't think the business does. So this is something that I want to figure out. Why design and optimization are untethered. Why are they not tightly integrated in businesses? To be sure, there are some businesses for which they are integrated. When you think of leaders in design thinking and experimentation, you might think of companies like Google or Amazon or Airbnb. And it's no coincidence that those are businesses that are disrupting the market, changing and responding to customer expectations faster, and that most other businesses are trying to keep up with that. So let's see if through this investigation we can capture a little bit of the magic that happens when businesses tightly integrate big design thinking and optimization. And to do that, we're going to ask 3 core questions in this investigation. 1, what's good design? 2, is conversion optimization good design? And 3, is personalization good design? Let's start with that first question. Just close your eyes for a second and just ask yourself, what is good design? I'm going to guess that most of you did not picture a broom or a chair or a record player, or an old radio, which not coincidentally looks a lot like the iPod or the iPhone. Well, I'm here to say that there was a time in the middle part of the 20th century, when good design, literally those words, in quotes, were defined as the intersection of form and function. And the Museum of Modern Art in New York did a whole show about good design that was about using everyday objects that applied as little design as possible to solve a problem. The great product designer Dieter Rams, who was the head of product design for Braun and inspired a lot of the work of Steve Jobs and Johnny Ives at Apple, also was a big proponent of as little design as possible and shared 10 principles of good design in the 1970s. Well, to be clear, a lot has changed since the middle part of the 20th century. The democratization of personal computing and personal computing design software, obviously the advent of the internet, and collectively, those innovations allowed people to design more, to deconstruct design, to design new things for design's sake. And form and function also became untethered. By the 1990s, when the internet began becoming significantly adopted, I think it's safe to say that as little design as possible was no longer the design ethos that was being abided by. Perhaps the culmination of design for design's sake, I would suggest, is the 1993 Seinfeld episode with the puffy shirt, where function and form did not abide. Fortunately, a lot has changed since the 1990s. Companies everywhere, designers everywhere, have been inspired to invest in thinking around user experience design, product design, human-centered design, all ethos which do something very important. They inch closer to the user and further away from the brand. They acknowledge the user's control, they're interested in the user, they research the user. But let me ask, have we come far enough? Let me ask it even another way. In designing solutions to big problems, do we think that the design process is fully drinking from the fire hose of available data? Is it truly designing in an experimental fashion? And conversely, do we think the investment and the adoption and the growth in experimentation and optimization practices has effectively pierced and transformed the capital D design process in most businesses? I would suggest no. I still see in most businesses huge design changes, design for innovation, design for brand, multi-channel service design changes being released without validation or being considered too big to fail. So being launched perhaps with a little bit of a holdback, but no real sense that the data that it produces matters other than to validate initial biases. Similarly, I know too many designers who desperately want to know if their work matters, if it was good work or not, why or why not, and never get the benefit of the data and the information to communicate that to them. So here we are, 2018, and I would suggest that capital D design and optimization are aware of each other. They bump into each other at performance marketing meetings. But really, they were born into different families and kind of on opposite sides of the track. And that separately, that's a real problem. So what is the solution? If it's not human-centered design or user experience design, what should we name this thing that is about the integration of big design thinking and experimentation? Well, it has to be equally confident that it knows about the user, but curious to learn. It has to be interested in knowing whether it works, why or why not. I've been thinking about this not just for the weeks leading up to Opticon, but for months, candidly for years. And appropriately, late one night, I was watching a Dateline NBC rerun, a mystery, and I turned to my wife and I said, honey, I've got it. I've got the name for the brand of design thinking that we want to practice and that we want to talk about. And to do that, we need to erase the line. Because that line was organizational orthodoxy to begin with. It was a false binary. All design is experimental, and all experimentation is design. And with that, inspired by my Dateline NBC episode, I went to bed so excited. I texted our director of marketing and I said, I've got it. It's evidence-based design. I got into work super early that morning, and Brandy, our director of marketing, said to me, Matty, I love the name. It's a great name. It might be too good of a name. And what she meant was, if I had spent 60 more seconds on the internet searching Wikipedia, I would have found that other people had already landed on evidence-based design. It's widely used in healthcare design, in architecture, and in landscaping. It's an academic term. And at first, for a moment, I was crestfallen. I said, damn. But then I realized, you know what? I know a good bandwagon when I see it. This is the bandwagon I'm jumping on. And certainly, creating a new definition for evidence-based design didn't seem plausible. It actually seemed like a lot of work. But the more I read about evidence-based design, the more I thought, these are our people. They speak the same language we speak. They talk about informed decisions, decisions based on predictive performance, results reported transparently. They talk about starting design with the problems. They talk about encouraging testing. So rather than redefining evidence-based design, I am all in on this bandwagon. And instead, what I'd like to share with you today are 10 principles of evidence-based design. Principles for the designers in your life who love big, aesthetic, bold, innovative, challenging design solutions. And for the sober, meritocratic, fact-based analysts, product managers, developers, engineers, and optimization directors in your life to collaborate around. These 10 principles are also a direct homage to the 10 principles of good design that Dieter Rams shared in the 1970s. But these are principles that account for design in an age where the user is entirely in control, expectations are changing at a pace faster than our capacity to keep up, and where the availability of data is greater than ever before. First and foremost, I would suggest good design solves problems. The converse of that is that good design does no harm. It does not create new problems. Good design is measurable. Good design is an experiment. Good design is iterative. Good design is research. Good design listens. Good design enables user control. It doesn't fight it. Good design is curious, and the flip side, good design is parenthetically, statistically confident. These are the principles that we practice every day in experimenting for better customer experiences. And there are two principles that I would suggest have survived from Dieter Rams' principles of the 1970s. Good design must solve problems, and good design must do no harm. It must not create problems. There's that word again, problems. It keeps coming up. Well, one of the things that we've learned at Accenture Interactive is that the problems are the fulcrum of winning experiments. They are also the fulcrum of good design. Ideas are everywhere. Aesthetic design is a commodity. But problems, and specifically problems most worth solving, are the most valuable asset of any business. Understanding those problems is the means for creating value. The more you solve problems most worth solving, the more value you create. The more problems you introduce for your customers, the more value deteriorates. There's something almost physical, if not metaphysical, about this. And we learned this by looking back at the tens of thousands of experiments that we had run and said, what is the difference between the experiments that win and those that don't win? And without fail, it was the degree to which we understood the root problem. When you understand the root problem, the hypothesis is easy to map back to it. This revelation changed the way we operated at Clearhead and now at Accenture Interactive. Instead of jumping into solution hypotheses, we leaned back and reveled in problem understanding. You cannot solve every problem. Not all problems are created equal. Testing for testing's sake does not create value. It is not the experiment that creates value. It is not the 100 experiments that creates value. It is the experiment that solves the problem most worth solving. Problem solution mapping, or PSM, is like yoga for us. It's a set of poses that we practice every day. We always get better. We never get there. And it's a unifying practice. It's one that accounts for product, for UX, for UI, for marketing, for merchandising, for engineering. All experimentation is rooted around the biggest problems that challenge your ability to succeed in the goals and have the outcomes that you desire. This might sound a little hokey-pokey, maybe a little bit abstract, or maybe a little bit complicated to you all. And the truth is, this is the hardest work we do at businesses today. The hard work is not launching experiments. We do that better, faster, more frictionlessly than ever before. The hardest part is mobilizing businesses to organize around problems. Let's bring it to life for a minute. And to do that, I want to share a case study with one of our most precious clients, one that we share with Optimizely. Hopefully, Jill Brown-Thomas is in the audience today. If she is, hello, Jill. Wolverine Worldwide is a publicly traded company that sells footwear from companies like Wolverine and Saucony and about a dozen others. And I love the experience optimization program at Wolverine because it was born out of a UX program. And when we kicked off with Wolverine, we did what we always do, which we kicked off the problem solution mapping process. And while we're gathering data on problems most worth solving, something always happens, which is we've just started with a client and they have pent-up demand. And they say to us, listen, there's a set of, our goals are clear and there's a set of problems that we know we want to solve. In this case, the problem related to the view cart page on their checkout. And they were pretty sure that they had created too many reasons to exit, that there was a problem with hierarchy between H1 and H2 headings, that they were not prioritizing the right information, and also that they had not given people enough payment options. So there were a series of problems that we ganged into several hypotheses for one experiment because there was a lot of confidence that they understood and that we understood the problems. Well, we found that while everyone loved the new design, we did not have a positive impact. And it was not that we did not solve some of the problems, but it was that we had introduced more problems, or as many problems as we had solved. So we went back to the drawing board, and we said, you know what? We have created some new problems here. For one, we did not give people a chance to continue shopping. Number two, we created too much friction for people that wanted to enter promo codes or coupons. And number three, we prioritized the wrong payment method, the payment method that really wasn't the one they wanted to use. We got feedback to validate these problems through both the experiment as well as session playback and usability testing. And we went into a pivot version of the experiment knowing much more about what the root problems were. And the second go around, we confidently solved the problem with not just better click-through rate from view cart to checkout, but for overall order conversion rate. So this was a simulation of problem solution mapping, which is the pursuit of evidence-based design, which I would suggest is good design. This is also an example that I think many of us would consider conversion optimization. I want to ask a question that I referred to in the beginning. Is conversion optimization good design? Well, it certainly purports to be evidence-based, as we just saw. So let me kind of deconstruct the question. Is conversion optimization design? Conversion optimization is traditionally relegated to discrete changes in a funnel in a channel. Not always, but traditionally so. So when I ask, is conversion optimization good design? I also think it's fair to say that in most businesses, conversion optimization is not even considered design. It might be considered performance marketing. It might leverage design. But in terms of proximity to the C-suite and how people think of creative decisions, I would say that conversion optimization is at the bottom of the totem pole, which is not unto itself the problem. The problem is not that conversion optimization is not considered design. The problem I would suggest is I'm not certain that conversion optimization actually optimizes experiences. Is conversion optimization the same thing that Jay and David and Claire and John shared today? Is it the same thing as digital experience optimization? And my answer is maybe, sometimes, but also my answer is, well, how could it be? Constrained to a single channel and extracted from the rest of design and UX, it is fundamentally misorganized. How can you really impact an entire customer experience or journey if you are over-orienting around the optimization of a single channel? So that's a handicap that conversion optimization always carries with it. Further, conversion optimization has grown and been adopted really on the basis of what I believe to be a singular fallacy. And that is that all conversions are valuable or incremental. And that is simply not the case. I cannot tell you how many digital leaders I have spoken to where they have had a version of the following conversation with me. Matty, we're doing so much to improve order conversion, and yet I'm also seeing metrics like NPS, CSAT, average order value, lifetime value go down. I'm also seeing attrition and potentially cannibalization of other channels, and I have this sneaking suspicion that the two things are related. So please don't boo me, don't chase me off the stage. I'm here to say that conversion optimization can hurt your business. You can optimize for faster but less valuable purchases. Those purchases that are easy and inexpensive, but are not valuable experiences. You can optimize towards less valuable customers. You can simply shift revenue from one channel to another with no incremental benefit and not necessarily a better experience. You might please a few people deep in the funnel, but alienate others. How could you do that? Perhaps by making it easier to buy, but harder to explore or discover. Let me be clear and say that I do believe that order conversion rate is an important metric in the same way other metrics are to determine if your change has produced difference in an experience. I absolutely think that there are many experiments for which order conversion rate is an important metric. But I do not believe that order conversion rate is a great measure of experience optimization. To back up and widen the aperture, we would have to wholesale reconsider what are the metrics for measuring better experience. We'd have to think less about order conversion rate, leads, average order value, revenue per visit, and think more about NPS and CSAT and LTV and average revenue per user. So what I would suggest is that conversion rate may or may not, improved conversion rate may or may not correlate to better experience. But what I can tell you is that improved experience always correlates to either more or more valuable conversions in the long run. So I would want to conclude this part of our investigation by sort of exposing three truisms that I think are important to share. One, in almost every business, optimization is misorganized and misconceived, and particularly constrained in its ability to influence design. Two, conversion optimization is not the same thing as experience optimization. And as a result, I would say three, many businesses are actively practicing conversion optimization, but not experience optimization. So let's take stock for a moment. We have answered the question, is conversion optimization good design? With the answer, maybe, but certainly that experience optimization is good design because it is the continuous pursuit of evidence-based design. So let's ask that third question. But to ask that question, I could either define what experience optimization is, which would be a logical next step, or I could talk about a flavor of experience optimization. I'm going to choose the latter. Number one, I think John Nerona and the team previously did a great job defining what experience optimization is. Number two, I think you're all going to learn and talk about it much more over the next 2 days. Number three, it sounds like a lot of work to try to define it. So instead, I'm going to talk about a flavor of experience optimization. But to do that, I'm going to have to say a bad word. I'm going to have to use a word that I actually thought the censors might bleep out, and I was surprised because it was used in the keynote a couple times. So for those of you that are sensitive or faint of heart, forgive me. That word's personalization. Yes, the dreaded word personalization, the word that I think engenders eye rolls and fatigue. And it's a word that in part has become a maligned buzzword because at some point in the last 5 years, it became untethered from experimentation, as though personalization were better than, worse than, or different from experimentation. The metaphor we like to use at Clearhead is that suggestion is like suggesting that the Richter scale is better or worse than earthquakes. As I think all of us know, you can personalize experiments and you can experiment on personal experiences. Another reason why personalization is such a malign term is because of eye charts like this, that collectively share a series of technologies and tactics that cumulatively are impossible to deliver against the promise of. The ocean of personalization is unswimmable. It is constantly receding from the shoreline and getting further and further away. Personalization is the topic that is on everyone's mind every year, on everyone's budget, and then at the end of the year, there's always the fatigue comment of, maybe we'll try it next year. The fatigue is so great that most businesses do what I call the check down. They start with, oh, we'll buy software. We'll build a data layer. Oh, we'll have a multi-year project around the golden view of a customer. Well, I'm here to say that personalization is not only unswimmable, it's not even a thing. So rather than thinking about the technology, why don't we pivot to think about the experience and the user problem, the problem of utility and relevance and a conversation? Because that sounds a lot more like experience optimization to me, right? So let's get off of the ocean and come on to the beach of what we would call personal experience design. Come on to the beach, it's safe, no sharks here. It's a lot simpler to diagram. It's a lot simpler to talk about and define. Personal experience design is simply the design of experiences that takes explicit and implicit inputs, applies intelligence, either human intelligence or machine intelligence, to create outputs in content and experience. And it does that with the benefit of conversation and user control. That is definable, and I don't know about y'all, but that sounds like something that can be done. Personal experience design has different values than I think the way personalization has been talked about in the market. Personalization is often talked about in terms of things like segmentation and algorithms and trigger marketing and collaborative filtering, things that largely guess about the customer. Well, I don't know about you, but in my personal relationships, I like to know rather than guess. So what would a personal experience design actually look like? We have dozens of examples that we work on, but there was one that I saw that was so great that we didn't work on, but I was inspired to share. And that is an example of the Warby Parker frame selector quiz. Warby Parker had a challenge that many businesses have, and that is how do you get the customer to quickly and frictionlessly find the version of the product that they need amongst thousands of permutations? Should we ask them to navigate? Should we ask them to go through filters and facets? They did something crazy. They just asked the customer, what are you looking for? What's your fit? What shapes do you like? What colors do you like? Through this process, they totally disrupted all of the assumptions around navigation and personalization. But this is personal experience design. They took in inputs, they applied basic intelligence, and they outputted content and experience for relevance. When I got my frames, that was a signal back to Warby Parker about what I wanted, what my preferences were. And now when I go to warbyparker.com, it can now have a conversation with me about those inputs. Conversational UX, concierge UX, preference centers. Those are all versions of personal experience design. So I think it's fair to say, as we round third and head for home, that personal experience design is a form of experience optimization, which is a pursuit of evidence-based design, which is good design. But did we answer those original questions about why are there not more designers here? Perhaps we did. And certainly, these are 3 observations that I would want to share and impart with all of you. Let's just face it, design and experimentation are not properly assimilated in most businesses. What I have suggested is that evidence-based design is a practice that works at the intersection of both design and experimentation. Conversion optimization is a constrained concept. There is nothing wrong inherently with improving order conversion rate. But that experience optimization accounts for the journey and channels and the problems most worth solving. And that finally, personalization is a concept. It's an unswimmable ocean. But that personal experience design is a practice, a flavor of experience optimization that values relevance, utility, conversation, and user control. I said in the very beginning that this investigation was personal for me, and it is. Kim alluded to my very first startup over 20 years ago in the 1990s was an online record store. It was the first one on the internet. It was my business. I was the lead designer. I was the front-end developer. And I launched a number of designs to the market that looked great to me and my team and landed with a thud. And in 1999, I promised to never do that again. And our entire design process was built around A/B testing. That journey is what brought me here today and what taught me ultimately that separately, design and optimization are constrained concepts that create more opportunity costs than they do value. But that together, design and optimization can be evidence-based, they can be optimized for experience, and they can be more personal. They can be good design. For those of you that have ever seen Rocky IV, this is like my Stallone moment where I say, if I can change and you can change, we all can change. I'm tempted sort of to do that, but I won't. I just want to give a call out and a sort of a go-forth challenge. For all of the designers in the room, have this conversation with the optimization team in your life. For the optimizers in this room, go talk to the designers in your life. For both of you, go see the Dieter Rams documentary, which is coming out right now, which talks a lot about as little design as possible. And then what I would finally like to conclude with is something that I say often, and I've said here at Opticon before, but I'd like to make one little change to it. I often say that experimentation is not a thing you do, but it's how you do things. I would suggest more specifically that experimentation is not a thing you do, but it's how you design things. Thank you for joining me, and thank you, Opticon, and thank you for Optimizely for having me. And everyone, I hope you have a wonderful Opticon 2018, and let's all optimize for more design voices here at Opticon 2019. Thank you.
Matty. Thank you. Matty, that was phenomenal, and you're absolutely right. Design and optimization do frequently sit within silos in an organization. I love how you provided a path forward for those two teams to work together to create amazing and custom and personal digital experiences for every visitor to a site. Thank you so much for your time today, and we really love this presentation. Fully expect to hear that it's one of the best next year in our next year quotes as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, everybody. So we're at lunchtime. I wanted to tell you that lunchtime is taking place in the expo hall. So please make your way over there and then make your way back here at 1 o'clock for Professor Stefan Tomke. He's going to give an amazing presentation about experimentation and the difference it makes in the world. Thank you. Enjoy your lunch.